Welcome to UC Santa Barbara's Innovator Stories series. I'm John Greathouse, and you can follow me on Twitter at John Greathouse. A sponsor tonight is PayJunction. PayJunction is one of the inaugural sponsors of this series. I think this is their fourth year. Highly appreciate their sponsorship, because without their sponsorship, we wouldn't be able to broadcast this all over the internet and all over the world. So we thank them. They were founded in 2000 by three UC Santa Barbara gauchos. And ever since then, they've been disrupting the payment processing industry by offering transparency and award-winning service. They have an all-in-one payment platform that was recently voted by Glassdoor as one of the best places to work. So it's great technology and great people. If you're looking for a job, they are hiring. They are growing like gangbusters. So check out PayJunction. And in fact, if you want to learn a little bit more about PayJunction, at the end of my interview today with Emma, you can see a spokesperson from PayJunction tell you a little bit more. So check that out. Speaking of Emma, I am interviewing tonight Emma Cohen, co-founder and CEO of Final Straw. In 2015, Emma and several of her friends launched Save the Mermaids, which was a nonprofit organization whose goal was to educate young and old people about the issue of pollution in our oceans and what we can do to mitigate that issue. I highly recommend the TEDx talk that Emma gave on that subject, and it was titled How to Save a Mermaid. If you really want to see if you just want to study how to give a great talk and how to give make a compelling argument and keep people's attention over 15, 18-minute period, watch How to Save a Mermaid. It's a great talk. So given her proclivity to save the ocean, it's not surprising that Emma ended up co-founding Final Straw. It's the world's first collapsible, reusable straw, and I love the tagline of the company. It's #SuckResponsibly. Before she started, I got one person to laugh. Before she started Final Straw, Emma spent 4 years in the pollution prevention department at Los Alamos Labs, and her job there was actually to see how the lab could reduce the waste that it was creating. She then earned her master's degree in environmental management and sustainability at Harvard, but most importantly, she earned her undergraduate degree at a small school called UC Santa Barbara that happens to be right next to the ocean. She calls Santa Barbara her home, and as we're going to learn during our discussion, her spirit animal is a cuttlefish. We're going to find out why. Let's welcome Emma to our stage. Great to see you. Thank you. All right, I know everybody's wondering. Let's start with the most important question. So why is your spirit animal a cuttlefish?
Definitely most important things first. I was diving in Komodo Islands and encountered a cuttlefish, and it was the most majestic, crazy looking animal I'd ever seen. They can shapeshift and they can color change, and we just had this moment, and it really has stuck with me forever.
But you're not a shapeshifter, or
I'm not. Well, I can be, actually. I look very presentable right now, not so much 10 minutes ago.
I think entrepreneurs have to be, right? We have to be super flexible. We speak to so many different constituencies and audiences and stakeholders, and so.
And you wear a lot of hats. When you start a company, you become an expert in marketing, customer service, digital advertising, operations. So you really do kind of have to know how to do every aspect of the business marginally well, and then you hire people who can do better. Right.
You have to be able to do it well enough to know that you need somebody else that can do it more professionally. And you have to have the self-awareness. As I noted in your intro, so you went to UCSB.
Yeah.
It's almost Halloween. I'm dating this show, but Halloween's coming up. So you did see a few red Solo cups while you were here. How did that experience with Red Solo Cups and just your broader experience right here by the ocean at UC Santa Barbara, how did that shape your journey in finally getting to the Final Straw?
Yeah, so I went to UCSB started in 2004, and I was a biopsych major and loved it. It was super cool, but I was trying to figure out how that would really play into my future plans. So as I'm kind of going down that path, I was living on DP, participated in Flowtopia, and just afterwards, like even in my drunken stupor, I was like, this is crazy. Like this is so much trash right on the beach, and we're all like conscious people trying to make a difference in the world. That's why we're here. We're trying to learn and do something, and then it just didn't fit. It was like, I'm trying to do something in the world, but then like here I am like using and consuming without any awareness, and it just kind of clicked. And then all of a sudden I was obsessed with single-use plastics, and such a Debbie Downer at parties, because I was like, you write your name on that cup. And yeah, and then it's just grown from there. And you just find what you love and what gets you excited, because when you start a company, it's long days, long nights, and no weekends. And so you better like hope that you love what you're doing.
Yeah, you better be stoked. And
you better be stoked.
It helps to have a mission, and it helps to make meaning. I tell my students that all the time. If you're starting a business, what meaning are you creating? And if at the end of the day it's making money, then good luck, because I don't think it'll sustain you.
It won't.
It's interesting. Google Floatopia, for those who are watching this all over the world. I cycle, and I cycle on Sunday morning, right when all the students are asleep. And we actually came through DP, Isla Vista, and after Floatopia, and we had that same reaction. So I surf at Campus Point, and that actually wasn't too messed up. But the beach right there, Sands and DP, was trashed, totally literally. Trashed. And we kind of had that same thought. We're like, really? Okay, you go to school by the ocean, and this is how you end up treating it. So I can see how you reacted, because I literally saw that same scene. So you had 4 years at Los Alamos, as I mentioned in your introduction, and you were, your goal there was to reduce waste at that organization. I'd love to hear takeaways you had from that sort of big company experience, right? And I don't, we're entrepreneurs for the most part in this room, but there's a lot to be said for your first job out of school, being at a bigger company. You can learn a lot of things, even if it's things that you learn that you don't want to do. What did you take away from that experience that you find that has helped you with Final Straw?
Well, first of all, they paid for my master's degree, so that was really exciting, not having debt on that. But so I was working for the federal government, and what I realized is I hate that. I hate bureaucracy. I hate doing things because people say that's how it's supposed to be done.
Right.
I like reasons, I like facts, and I like options. And so when someone's like, well, we need to get these signatures and they need to go in this order, I'm just like, that doesn't make sense to me.
Yep.
So, I think just like with dating, you have to like date a lot of people you don't like to find out what you like. It's the same with jobs. You have to go in, find out what you don't like, and that really informs like, okay, this is what I really like. And then after that, it was like, okay, I want to work on a boat. And so I just like went down to the marina and found the captain of the Truth, and I was like, I can cook. And so
I didn't know this in your past. Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's like, right now we live in this amazing time where you can kind of create whatever job you want, even if it doesn't exist, like you can create it. And so through the experience of like really kind of diving into what I didn't like, I was able to focus on what I wanted, and what I wanted was to be able to kind of make my own schedule, travel wherever I want, and make a company with a purpose.
Right. So talk to me about how graduate school fit into this. So you did your time at the big company, in this case the government. And then let's talk about University of New Mexico and Harvard. How did those two things come about, and why did you make the decision to pursue that, and then how have those helped you, or not?
Yeah, so after college, I was just like hanging out in Santa Barbara, and it's so amazing, and I wasn't doing anything productive. I was just like, taking odd jobs to like make money so I could just paddleboard and hang out. And I went to Thailand, and I was traveling around for 3 months, and I read this quote by Noam Chomsky, and it said, with increased privilege comes increased responsibility. And it just like hit me so hard that I'm so privileged, and like, what am I doing to give back? So after that trip, I came home, I quit my job, moved back to New Mexico, where I'm from, and started applying to schools. And I didn't know what I wanted to do, I just knew I needed to do something to make a difference. So I applied to University of New Mexico to do their JD MBA, and I was like, I'm gonna do environmental law, I'm gonna like change all these policies and make it so that like, I really wanna make junk mail illegal. That's like one of my big goals. I hate junk mail, it's such a waste of paper. But so I was like, I'm gonna make junk mail illegal by doing environmental law. I was also working at the lab. So what I learned at the lab is that it's much easier to create change from within versus trying to create legislation and policy to enforce change on other companies.
Yep.
Because let's face it, all the companies that are the world right now, they have so much money and they're gonna fight it super hard. So you look at the single-use bag legislation where it's like like the American Chemical Council comes out, they send lawyers in, and they're like, their lawyers are fighting all of this legislation. So this is kind of a roundabout story, but that's where I really realized that I can change things from within. And then I realized the UNM program wasn't a fit. And one of my mentors suggested the Harvard program, and it was amazing because it was remote. It was very specific into what I wanted to do, which is, sustainability and environmental management. And I got in. So that was exciting.
So do you feel like you've drawn upon that? Because students come to me, they come to all professors like, should I get a graduate degree? What do you think? What are your thoughts on just as a student?
Yeah, that's a tough question because I think that, I learned a lot in it. Am I using what I learned necessarily on a day-to-day basis now in my profession? No.
Right.
But I learned, it was one of those things too, where I'm like dipping my toe in on all of these different areas. I was really interested in green building. I was like, oh, maybe I'll get LEED certified and start going down that route. And then I was like, And then my thesis project I did on a reusable to-go container. And so that's how I was like, oh, products. Like this is where we can make things that give people alternatives. And then, ended up with this little baby. So, the answer is I think it depends. A lot of times you can take a certificate class at a graduate program, and that way you can see is this something I really want to invest in financially? So I always recommend that. But at the end of the day, some of the most amazing CEOs and world leaders don't necessarily have a graduate degree. So I don't think it's necessary, but I think it always helps steer you in one direction or another.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I phrase it like you don't need it to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
I mean, more education, more contacts, more networks aren't going to hurt you, but you don't need it. So I'm going to go to a student question after this one. But let's talk a little bit about 2015, Save the Mermaids. I know you did that with some of your friends. You had some guerrilla marketing aspects to it, which I think are really cool. So you guys would go to city council meetings dressed up as mermaids and sort of shame them, I guess, a bit.
Yeah.
So what were some of the things that came out of that? Obviously awareness was a big goal, but did you see some concrete change? Did people take you seriously and make things happen, or was it or not? How did that play out?
Well, I think it started off that no one took us seriously. They're like, who are these girls dressed up like mermaids doing these ridiculous stunts? But then we were the ones getting coverage.
Yeah.
So it was like, yes, on one hand, we weren't the people who'd been in the game for a decade working on it, but we were doing something that worked.
Yeah.
And it really, and we banned single-use plastic bags in Santa Barbara, not because of what we did, but because of the group effort and everyone that was involved. But I think the big lesson from doing that was that I can portray a message in any way I want. And the way I do portray messages is in terms of how I want to hear it. So I don't want this granola, boring, kind of crunchy stuff. I want it to be sexy and sparkly and exciting and fun and engaging, and there better be some puns. So that's if you look at our Instagram or website, that's how we message. We message in a way that has a really clear, distinct voice. We're a little sassy, but we want to have a little fun doing it.
So I love that you use that word voice, because authentic voice is hugely important, especially when you're doing something a little edgy, maybe a little unconventional.
Yeah.
Right? One thing about getting attention, but then what are you going to do once you get that attention? And I think have a consistent, friendly, but maybe it can be a little tongue-in-cheek voice is really important.
Totally.
I admire what you guys did there. And again, think about what you can do differently. Don't do what everyone else is doing, because everyone else is doing it. What can you do differently to stand out and make a difference and be heard?
Totally. So just
go
real
ahead.
quick, some of the best advice I ever got was don't put a message out there that you think everyone wants to hear. Think of really specific people either in your life or create that customer and give them a name. What do they do for a living? What's their favorite nail polish color? Really get specific about that person and then talk to them. And that way you're not diluting your message, because at the end of the day, if you try and please everyone, you're gonna be boring. speak to someone, and it might be yourself. Like, I am my target customer, which is great, but now I'm trying to expand and also speak to like men. And so who am I creating that I'm speaking to directly?
Right. Yeah, hugely important, because if you don't know who you're speaking to, how are you going to craft your message appropriately?
Exactly.
You might get lucky, but you probably won't.
Yeah.
We'll take the first student's question.
Hi. So my question is that there's a lot of companies and products that are coming out now because of emerging environmental trends. So how do you and your company, Final Straw, plan on becoming successful or maintaining your success with all this competition?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Thank you. I think one of the most important things when you've got a company is you're aware of what's going on around you, but you're not just like moving forward to kind of like be in front of other people. There's a lot of companies out there that I'm watching everything they're doing and I'm letting them go ahead so that I can learn from their mistakes. So a great example right now is TerraCycle is doing a program called Loop. They're working with the largest brands out there to do a circular economy and refillable containers system. The beauty of being a small startup is you're really connected to your customers. When you start dealing on such a large scale, you lose that connection. So it's like, I'm gonna watch everything they do so that when I'm ready to start my subscription service company, I've learned from all of their mistakes. This is a very emerging field and there's a lot of people in there, but there's no one right now making items to replace single-use plastic, very specifically around foodware. So, I haven't showed you guys the straw. This is Final Straw. It's a reusable, collapsible straw that fits on your keychain, comes with a telescoping brush inside, and fits in this sleek little kind of AirPods-y like case. So what we're doing is we're making items that are easy to carry, easy to clean, convenient, and fun to use, and well designed. So right now there isn't anyone else out there doing that, but I guarantee that it'll be happening really quickly, and that's great. Competition is really good because it inspires me to get better and push myself. So I welcome more companies in this space because we need it.
So I was speaking to a group of students in August from Brazil, and I mentioned Emma because I was talking about the greater Santa Barbara ecosystem and some of the companies here in town. I'm bragging about Emma, and this girl in the front row raises her hand, and these are high school kids, and oh God, I have a question, fantastic, because they're shy and everything, and she says, I have one of those, and I go, you have one of what? She goes, I have one of those straws, and so I assumed she meant like a generic, like some other straw. And I said, oh, cool, do you have it with you? Let's show the class. She pulls it out. It's one of your straws. And then another girl next to her had one too.
That's
and
awesome.
I'm like, they live in Brazil. Like, this is very cool. So, and again, the demo was probably 17 or 18. So you're reaching people.
It's a global movement. We've sold straws in over 100 countries, and it's crazy to think that just a year and a half ago this was an idea.
Right.
And I had no business experience, no clue what I was doing, and just went on Kickstarter and kind of was like, let's see what happens, and it worked out.
So we're going to talk about that in a second, but I just want to ask you one more question about Save the Mermaids.
Yeah.
So I know that the group used the platform to teach elementary age students, and you had videos and things. I'm always curious about how entrepreneurs can leverage government funding. Did you get government grants, or was there some sort of an educational grant program that you were able to tap into? So
we primarily funded through merch.
Okay.
And we had super cool kind of like swaggy, styly merch that I still see around town.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So that was kind of our big thing. We didn't have someone on the team that really knew how to operate an NGO.
Got it.
Takes a lot of work, and I think we were all in college and like excited about other things, and so we're like, well, what's an easy way to make money? Let's sell things. And so I think that is a very viable way to fund a nonprofit. We didn't really go that route.
Okay, just curious, because I know in the education world there is money, but it takes time, and you got to write grants and all that good stuff. So let's talk about Final Straw. So you co-founded that company with Miles Pepper in 2017. I'd love to hear a little bit about how you guys came together, and then the fact that he's moved on. Sort of what was the evolution? Because that's very common in relationships in general, but also in startup relationships. That you meet somebody, you start a business, and then for whatever reason, things, one person carries on, the other doesn't.
Totally. So Miles and I we actually met at Burning Man in 2017, and I was dressed like a nun, and that's just like always his first image of me. But we started chatting. I've kind of been known as the straw lady in my group of friends because of the TEDx talk and my like incessant nagging anytime someone pulls out single-use plastic. And so he basically had a very rough concept for the final straw. And so we started talking, and I was like, well, I'm ready to quit my job. I'm ready for something new. Let's try it. What's the worst that could happen? So I quit my job at the lab, and we started like really kind of focusing in on it in January of 2018. We launched the Kickstarter in April of 2018, so 4 months later. And then, because it always felt like an arranged marriage between us, because we barely knew each other, and then we're like, yeah, let's do this together. And then all of a sudden, we raised a ton of money, and like the heat was on, and it was kind of like, okay, like, are you ready to go to battle with me? And Miles is younger. I'm 33. He's 23. And I got my yayas out in my 20s. I traveled all over the world. Like I did it all. And so I'm like, let's like bear down and work the 16-hour days, 7 days a week on this and make this a household name. And he's like, well, I kind of want to like move into a van and like travel. And I'm like, oh my God, #van life. But like, which is fine. And that's totally okay. And it's something that I got to do in my 20s. And so ultimately I just was like, look, do you want to live in a van and like travel around, or do you want to run this, multi-million-dollar company with me?
Right.
And that's where we just kind of had different values, and we're still friends and we talk, and it didn't pan out the way we thought it would.
But it sounds like you guys were honest with each other. You communicated with each other, because I'll tell you, maybe this will shock you, it doesn't usually end with people being friends.
Well,
it usually ends with lawyers getting involved and all kinds of nonsense.
It had a peaceful ending, but like it was not peaceful for months. There was about 6 months this year where I didn't know what the fate of the company was.
Right.
He held a lot of cards in his hand, and there was a lot of lawyers involved. And he ended up filing for dissolution of the company, which meant that if he won that, we would basically like cut the baby in half. And I'm like, save the baby.
The baby usually dies when that happens.
Yeah, and I love the baby more than anything, besides my dog. And so ultimately, lawyers are getting involved, and we're about to go to court, and like things are getting super crazy and heated. And I just had this like vision basically that I needed to go to his house in LA, and he hadn't talked to me for months. The lawyers had told him not to talk to me because I'm very convincing, and so I just drove down there and showed up at his door and was like, hi, like let's talk this out. And it worked, and we settled 7 days later. And so it was just kind of like a true testament to being vulnerable and just trying to connect with someone on a human to human level. Because I think at the end of the day, like, we are all good. We all want the same things for each other.
Right.
And, I always wanted to give him what he wanted and what I thought he deserved, because we started the company together.
Wow. So I did not know that part of your story. That is a fantastic outcome.
Yeah,
And
it was crazy.
The lawyers will always tell you, don't talk to the other side, I can handle it, blah, blah, blah. So I love the fact that you said, you know what, forget it, I know Miles, I'm going to drive down there and make this
My
happen.
lawyer's like, please don't. And I'm like, gotta go, bye.
Bad cell coverage. Click.
Yeah, exactly. We're in a tunnel.
So let's go back to the pre-lawsuits. So you decided Kickstarter. Why did you go that route? What was the impetus for that, as opposed to conventional capital or raising money?
Yeah, so everyone, when I'm telling people about this idea, and one thing to know when you're starting a business is you're going to get so much bad advice, and there's so many people out there that are just like, they're so obsessed with the process and the cookie cutter way of how business used to be, it's not like that anymore. We can use social media to validate ideas. We can use crowdfunding to raise money. You don't have to go these kind of traditional ways that used to be how you kind of had to do it. So, you know, we just had people like, well, you need to do your market validation tests. And like, I'm like, why? Why don't we just do a Kickstarter? And if it's cool and people like it, they'll buy it. And then that's our market validation. So that was the reason. And I just wanted to make a cool video. So, because I love, you know, comedy and mermaids. And so we made a cool video and went on Kickstarter and raised almost $2 million.
Yeah, see, I mean, you're being a little modest, but 1.8 million, I mean, if you guys Google like the average Kickstarter, it's like $32. I mean, it's, most of them fail. The large majority of them fail. So you guys crushed it. Are you comfortable, I don't know if you're comfortable talking about what your sales are now. Your sales are pretty impressive.
They're really good. So in 2018, we did 5 million, and we're looking at close to doubling that this year.
So folks, I'm telling you, I sit in board meetings year after year after year with software companies that would love to get to $10 million in 4 or 5 years. And you've done it in less than 2.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, the benefit of doing that is, you know, you get the world's attention, but it's like the day the Kickstarter closed, and everyone's like, are you going to party? And I'm like freaking out, having a full-on anxiety attack that now I have to deliver 100,000 straws in 6 months, where I just like basically copied and pasted someone else's timeline onto ours and like changed a couple things. It wasn't plagiarism, I promise. But you know, it went really quickly from excitement to just total dread.
Terror.
Yeah, and paralyzing anxiety.
Yep. So I do want to get to, I'm going to let several students ask questions in a row, but before we get to them, so you mentioned the video. Do you think that was the single most important factor in your success? I love that video, by the way. If you just want to go back and watch the Kickstarter video. Oh, no, you have it on your site now. So I mean, yeah. So you can find it pretty easily. It's a great video.
Thanks. I think that the number one indicator of success on any business is timing. It's also true of relationships.
Sure.
We happened to launch as the world had basically chosen the plastic straw as, you know, the symbol of waste and the plastic pollution crisis. So in January of 2018, Seattle banned straws, which created this kind of cascade of other events where you had, you know, more legislation sweeping the country and the world, but then also corporate buy-in, unlike anything we've really ever seen. So you had Disney, Alaska Airlines, Marriott, IKEA banning plastic straws voluntarily because they're listening to the consumer. This is what the consumer wants. And then, you know, in the midst of all of that, we're like, oh, we have a solution. Because prior to this, the only reusable straws out there were glass, bamboo, and metal. And like, try taking that thing with you. It's a hazard.
Right. Okay, so I love the self-awareness. To make note of all these things. Your self-awareness is fantastic because a lot of entrepreneurs become so self-absorbed. They're like, well, of course it was my genius. And, you know, it's like, well, it was, timing is a big part of life. Now, the reality is you were ready and you struck and you have a great worked and you did a lot of things right, but, you know, timing never hurts.
And we worked our asses off. It was, you know, 2 people working for, you know, 3.5 months exclusively, building pre-campaign strategy, you know, creating a social media following, getting an email list together, you know, working on the prototype design. So yes, timing is so crucial, but you also need to be ready.
But it's not the whole story.
No.
Let's go to another student's question.
Hi, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah.
So my question is concerning sort of the whole plastic straws movement and or the anti-plastic straws movement. And one of the main criticisms of that movement is that it allows consumers to feel like they're really helping the problem when they, you know, buy your product or use compostable straws or things like that, when in reality the issue of plastic waste in the oceans is a huge, much broader problem that goes far beyond plastic straws. Yeah. So my question for you is, do you think that focusing on such a narrow solution to the bigger, broader piece of the puzzle is a good business strategy, or would you like to expand your business into other sort of venues to reduce plastic waste in the oceans as a whole?
That's awesome. That's such a good question, and it brings up such a valid point, which is that if we took away every single-use plastic straw in the world, we would still have a really big problem. So, this isn't solving anything. But as my grandma likes to say, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So, I think what's important about what we're doing is we're giving people a really actionable way to take the first step. And just like, my whole obsession started with plastic, it started really small. I started with plastic bags, and then I was like, oh, whoa, look at cups. And then it started expanding. And that's what we see with our customers. They start somewhere, and then they see, oh, this is actually pretty easy and fun and makes me feel good. I'm getting that positive reinforcement. I'm getting the likes on Instagram when I post the photos. And whatever it takes to reinforce these behaviors, social validation is really, really helpful. And then, what we see is that they start traveling down the line. You bring up some really good points around the dangers around this. We also see customers post so many photos of our straw in a plastic cup. And it's okay, good job, golf
there.
clap for taking the first step, but also let's be real, this isn't solving the problem. And then you've got issues with biodegradable plastics and paper, and it's those aren't viable alternatives. Paper, requires a ton of energy and water and materials to produce. So, they did a life cycle assessment recently, and the environmental impact of one paper bag, I'll say it around. The environmental impact of one single-use plastic bag is 3 times less than one paper bag. So you need to reuse a paper bag 3 times in order to equal the environmental impact of one single-use plastic bag. Similarly, we've got an issue around biodegradables, because now it's for 10 years I've been asking for no straw in my drink. And now when I do it, they're like, it's okay, it's biodegradable. And I'm like, oh my God, do you have a compost? Do you have an industrial composter? And they're just like, whoa, lady, chill out. But so, it's we don't have the infrastructure yet to support biodegradables, and therefore, there needs to be so much education around that. Which is why, if you go on our Instagram, we talk about all this stuff. And, every single Instagram post, it's not just otters holding, hands. It's disseminating this information in bite-sized chunks where we really are trying to educate people, but we have to start somewhere. So yes, we are broadening the spectrum. I'm working on a fork. That's the next product. And then also looking at integrating reusables into food delivery systems, and really just anywhere you see waste. I'm kind of plodding away, but it's also really hard to develop products, and so we're just kind of taking it one step at a time.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the spirit of your question was good. But there are haters out there.
Yeah.
In every business, you will get them. If you're successful, they will come out of the woodwork, because there's just a fair number of negative folk, right? They're not going to build anything themselves, but they'll be the first ones to criticize. Yeah. And so I know you've gotten some of that. Every business gets it.
Tons.
Well, you're not solving any problems. It's really? So not doing anything's better, right?
Yeah.
So one thing you said to me that has stuck with me, and my wife and I have talked about this, and we are getting hyper about this one-use plastic, which I wasn't before. So when I first heard the straw ban years ago, I was that cynical person in my car going, "Are you kidding me? That's ridiculous." Because I was kind of thinking, how is that going to solve anything? And the term you shared with me was that straws are a gateway plastic. And that simply by starting to think about, is a straw one straw gonna make a difference? No, but the gazillion, I think you say in your video, it's like a bus, there's 3 buses or 117 buses or whatever of straws.
Yeah,
it's
2.5 times around the earth.
Yeah, it's a lot of straws.
Yeah.
But just getting people that's almost like the first step, just thinking about not getting a straw, not getting a plastic cup, taking your reusable cup to Starbucks or wherever you get your coffee.
Exactly.
So I do think, I didn't see the value in it before we spoke on the phone, but after we did, I said, and then I wrote that article in Forbes, and I was like, I think this is an important message to get out there. And I think obviously you're making an impact. So
yeah, and the straw is just the easiest one to choose. there's so many items out there. Like let's talk about coffee cups. Those are like the
Right.
worst. They're not recyclable. You know, they have plastic in them and paper. But like, let's start with something really easy and then get people kind of acclimated. I mean, we're going back to the milkman model where it's like people need to bring things on their own. It's a little less convenient, but we can start to create these habits and then which turns into discipline. So start with something easy.
Yeah, and now you see in grocery stores, you can bring your bulk container and things that, 4 or 5 years ago, people said, nobody's going to do that. Well,
Yeah.
it's like people said nobody's ever going to fill up their gas back when we had full service gas in the 1960s or whatever. It takes time, and over time, the small steps make a difference.
I mean, we were on Shark Tank and the sharks were like, oh, you're never going to be able to get people to carry a $25 straw with them. And I'm like, oh, okay. And, here we are, sold over 350,000 of them.
Right. Geniuses. We've talked about Shark Tank. I've written about Shark Tank. So let's talk about that. So what was that experience like? Any demystifying you want to, because you were there behind the scenes.
Yeah.
I've talked to a number of people that have been on that show. And then maybe more helpful to folks watching this is, what would you do differently? Would you do it again?
Yeah, so first off, it was terrifying. I'd never pitched ever. So my first pitch was, in front of Mark Cuban, which was just so gnarly. But 1 week into our Kickstarter, they reached out to us. They're looking for kind of up and coming brands that don't really know their value yet so that the sharks can kind of swoop them up. So, when Shark Tank calls you and they want you to go on the show, you're just like, yeah, like I'll clear my schedule. So we went on, and it was very helpful in that, they were like, send us your balance sheets. And I'm like over here Googling, like, what's a balance sheet? And like, yeah, it was that bad. And so I got a, business school on crack training for the next month, trying to get everything figured out, watching the show, figuring out all the questions so that I had an answer to every single question. Because the last thing I wanted was to make a fool of myself on national TV. So would I do it again? Yes. Would I do it differently? Absolutely. We went on too soon. We went on with a prototype design. And so when we handed it to if you guys have ever seen a prototype, they look like, it's a 3D printed thing. We were like, had like orthodontist rubber bands on there, like, I like spray painted the cases. So, very MacGyver together. And if I were to do it differently, I just would have waited. I would have said, look, this is a great opportunity, but let's wait till we're ready. And would have gone on with this, which is just a million times more impressive, because Lori picks up her straw and she goes, mine's sticky. And I'm like, oh God, like the spray paint didn't dry last night. I thought they were going to like put that on TV, and luckily they cut it, but whew, it was intense. But at the end of the day, they want to see product that has customer reviews and people have touched and felt, and we just weren't there. We were 6 weeks old.
Did you see lift? Did you get orders by the time it aired?
Absolutely. So, that's the other thing is like, I went on with zero expectations. I was like, let's see, I'm setting the valuation pretty high.
Yep.
Because I know the value of our company, but, they might not bite at that valuation. And if you ever watch the episode, we did kind of this whole theatrical presentation where I had 5,800 straws drop from the ceiling onto the sharks to signify the amount of straws that are used every second. So I used it as a PR opportunity, and then, it did really well. But this is where we really saw the haters, because you like have such a kind of core viewing group, middle America, like I call her Mary Jo in Mississippi. And like, she's like, why I need a straw, use your lips. And I'm like,
No.
Hey, whatever you're doing to reduce waste, great. I commend those efforts. Like,
Right.
I don't want anyone using this straw that doesn't want a straw. Ultimately, that is the most sustainable thing to do. But if you really want a straw, suck responsibly.
So I have a former student that was on the show, got offers, didn't take them, but he had a consumer product as well, and he crushed it because those shows have a long life. I mean, they show those
Reruns
shows
are the best.
at like middle of the night. I mean, they're showing it all the time. So it's free, relatively free PR. You had to put time and effort and energy into it. And so the more theatrical, the more sort of impactful you make your performance, because it is a performance, the better that long tail will pay off for you. So if you have a consumer product that you can sell, directly online, I say go on Shark Tank. Otherwise, think twice. Let's get a couple of students' questions.
You talked about the sort of tsunami of bad advice you got. I'm curious in terms of criticism. I'm sure there was some of that too. What was the most valuable critique your project got?
I think that the critique, like to the actual Kickstarter or to the kind of company in general?
Maybe the company in general.
Yeah, so, I am super ADD, and so I've always got like a million ideas, and I'm going in a ton of directions. I think, I would say that every month I probably have the best advice I've gotten that month, but this month it's focus in on what I'm good at and stay there, and don't try and do, expand into other areas because that's what everyone else is doing. Like, keep the blinders on and just sprint. And so, I've when you start talking to investors is really when you start getting bad advice because they want to see, how are you like quadrupling growth? Like, how are you like ensuring a lifetime value of a customer? And like, this doesn't have a lifetime value of a customer. We sell one straw, it has a lifetime guarantee, and that's it. So we're not trying to get reoccurring revenue by getting them to buy like accessories and all this other stuff. I mean, at the end of the day, yes, we are creating additional products that we hope people find helpful, but a lot of investors want to see, like a deodorant company or something where people are buying more and more. So I think that, on that note, it's like you really have to define your values and stick to them, and don't let kind of like money, greed, sparkly things like distract you, because there's this you'll get like a shot and you'll feel like you're on your path, and then you just have to stay there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the fork as your most likely next product. Are you going to pursue crowdfunding? So I wrote about a company called Peak Design, and that article did really well. They had a $14 million Indiegogo. I think all told they've raised over $30 million. That's the way they fund their products. Yep. They don't go to venture capitalists. They don't go to the banks. So they're on product 8 or 9 and did 14 million. Are you going to do that with the forks, or what are you thinking?
So this is honestly like a constant battle in my mind. The big downside and what happened to us with crowdfunding was that we got knocked off.
That was my next question.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll go into it because like, oh my gosh, it was horrible. It was the worst experience I've ever had. Within 2 weeks of launching, we're seeing, our exact ads, photos and videos of me, advertising the knockoff. And so the beauty of crowdfunding is, you can raise all this money to start your company. The downside is that there's people out there specifically watching Kickstarter campaigns to see what the new hot item is. And if it's really easy to manufacture, which ours is, it's just a straw, then they're going to knock you off. And they have no shame. Like, they bought all the domains, like Final Straw with 2 W's, like, copy our exact website photos of me, my dog on there, like, it just, and then which creates so much customer confusion because then our community is like, wait, you're selling the straw at half price on all of these other sites? And we're like, that's not us. And they're like, well, it says Final Straw on it. We're like, we know. So I have just like super bad PTSD from that. And it's what is making me hesitant about doing crowdfunding again. They will find out about Fork, eventually, but do I want to like put it up on a platform and say like, hey world, this is what's next? I'm not sure. So I am still debating with this idea. It would be great to be able to raise some money and like be able to fund everything. But at this point, we are a profitable company, and I have financing and some loans. So it's like I can also just make it work by tapping into our email list, social media platform, and kind of going a little more underground.
So let's say you do the fork or through crowdfunding or not, what advice would you have for folks that they want to do their first product, they don't have a choice, like they have to go the crowdfunding? You have choices now with people loaning you money and things. What would you do differently? We talked a little bit offline about some of the things to come. You're never going to defeat the pirates totally. That's their industry, and they're in different countries, and they don't obey our laws, and you're never going to shut them down, but what would you do to maybe mitigate their success?
Well, I have this theory that someone emailed us pretending to be media and got a copy of our prototype because we were sending them out to like media. So maybe be more careful on that front.
Right.
Also, just be prepared to a certain degree. We, didn't have any of our photos copyrighted. We hadn't done our trademarks ahead of time. We did apply for a provisional patent, but if you know anything about IP, patents are super expensive. So what you can kind of do is get a provisional patent, which is a foot in the door and basically a place in line where it says like, this is my idea. And then down the line, when you have the funding, because it's like 10 grand to do a utility patent, then you can get it. But then it still takes like 9 months to get that patent. And then
Right. If
you have
you're,
to-
that's quick.
if you, okay, well, so then you have to do track 1 to get it to go through
Right.
9 months. Then you have to enforce that patent. A US patent only works in the US. So we have, a global patent portfolio. So I think that at the end of the day, I wouldn't really do anything differently besides probably copyright our photos. At the end of the day, you just kind of have to say, whatever, this is, I'm taking this risk and this jump because this is something I believe in and I will deal with that when it comes. Every single successful Kickstarter with a, somewhat simple product gets knocked off. It's just how it is. So, set aside budget, do some research into IP. If you ever want to talk about it, call me because I love talking about IP. And then in terms of kind of making this a more general statement, what I would avoid when going into doing a Kickstarter campaign, don't let perfection bog you down. Don't wait till things are perfect because they never will be. And you'll just stall until you lose your timing. So, just kind of keep going for it. Keep sprinting.
Do you think, and I don't know the answer to this question, would it help again, mitigate the pirates, not going to defeat them, by not having such a long period to deliver? Because I remember when you and I talked, they were delivering straws.
Right.
Now they were crap.
Right.
And you still weren't delivering. So would that help if you were able to pull that?
Yeah, okay, so that is absolutely way better than what I just said. So we didn't have the funding to do that. We didn't have the money to do the tooling.
Right.
If you can afford it and you know that you are gonna sell enough of the product to make it worth it, definitely get the tooling done so that you can manufacture quickly. Because that was our other issue. We didn't even have a finalized design. Like we had this kind of prototype and then what happens after a prototype is then you have to do, it's called design for manufacturing or DFM, which is a totally different animal because you're designing for injection molded tools. And the structure is different and you have to change all these things so that you can mass produce a product efficiently.
And these are all things you knew nothing about.
Nothing.
Yeah, like everything you've ever learned, you learned once for the first time.
Yeah.
So that's entrepreneurs are just, we get that, we're not afraid. Like, oh,
Yeah.
injection molding, explain that to me.
Yeah, tell me more.
Let's take at least one more.
Hey Emma, I was wondering, when first beginning to market your Final Straw product to potential investors, what did you find to be the most challenging aspect of it?
Well, the most fun aspect was memes, and that's like I built the following on Final Straw Instagram on memes. I think the challenging part was, well, first of all, my design skills. I learned all my graphic design from University of YouTube, and and so having a vision but not being able to do it is really tough. Which is, when down the line you actually can hire people, it's great because I'm like, I have this vision and they're like, I have these skills. And so it aligns much better. It wasn't challenging at the first because I didn't have expectations. And so everything was just kind of like fun and exciting. And like, it was this just journey onto seeing what works. I'm a huge believer in testing, and so it was a lot of that. I figured out how to do like A/B testing on Facebook, so then I'm like looking at different graphical elements and how those perform differently versus different copy, and then doing like diving deep into like Amazon reviews of reusable straws. What is the language that people are using? Like, what are the exact words? Because as as you market a company, you want to be relatable, and so you just want to use the words that people use. So it's like, okay, do I say collapsible or foldable, and like all of these things. And that's actually the only place where the knockoffs kind of benefited me, is that I could like dive into their reviews and see like, okay, like what is really important? What do people really want? Like, how important is this like cleaning device? How important is, portability? And so that's where, I was able to go into all of their Amazon reviews and just like make a huge Excel sheet into, and then which informed kind of a lot of the decisions I made in the future. Yeah.
Have you seen that the platforms are getting better at policing the knockoffs, or is it still?
Yeah, it's gotten so much better.
Okay.
We work directly with Amazon and Wish and all of the platforms. eBay, like impossible. It's starting to change, and there's these old court cases back in the early 2000s that basically said that these platforms can just be a marketplace and people can sell whatever they want on it. So those set the precedent, which made it really difficult for companies like mine to like enforce our patents. But there are tools that are out there to help, and there are we use like a site that monitors all the copyrights. They're using AI and searching all the photos on the internet, flagging the ones that infringe, and then we can submit the takedown notices.
Cease and desist and all that. Okay. I have two more questions. You're in Santa Barbara, as we mentioned, but your team is decentralized. You're everywhere, and you have a fair number of employees now.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear about what's worked, what hasn't worked, running a decentralized team, the culture that you find is really a good fit, and any maybe tools, tips, tricks for other folks that are thinking, you know what, I don't want a big corporate office building where everybody clocks in.
Yeah, so when I started the company, I travel a lot, and I didn't want an office. And part of me like kind of did, because it's like fun to be able to see people and interact on a day-to-day basis. But the other part is like, if I don't have a meeting till 10, like I don't want to have to be somewhere. I want to go surf or something.
Right.
So there's been so many challenges which are very similar to even having an office. Obviously, cross-team communication is huge. We use platforms like Slack, Monday.com to organize tasks, and then also like kind of create different groupings of people to communicate on different things. In terms of culture, like this is where I just ended up hiring really great people that, they're not working for me to make $1 million. They're working on this project because they care, and this is something that's close to their hearts. So, basically, how do we take our fun company voice and insert it into our daily lives? So, we have Slack channels for like Pet Squad, where people are posting pet pictures, and like wins, where we're shouting people out, kind of random things like that. In terms of challenges, I've tried to integrate other software, and I'm pretty lax with things. I'm like, well, if you guys want to try like Trello, we can test it out and see how it works. And it's like, that doesn't work. You got to get everyone to buy in.
Here's what we're doing.
Yeah, because if the whole team isn't in and using the software, even if just one person is like, meh, then it's not going to work.
Right.
So that's one thing I've learned the hard way, and that's where it's kind of like, okay, I got to put like my big boss pants on and just like say, this is what we're doing, and get all of your stuff categorized in the software and move forward from there.
Cool. Now, the Peak Design CEO is telling me that he's actually recruited employees that were users of the product or fans of the product. Have you seen that as well?
Oh yeah, pretty much everyone is a user of the product, and it's important for us because it has to be a cultural fit. If they don't understand why we're doing what we're doing, then they'll just be so lost. And it doesn't mean that like everyone, like it's the opposite. It's not everyone we hire is like, out there like picketing against plastic. Like people are interested in the topic and it's fascinating to them. And so then they want to learn more and do more. We've used like the Skim Ambassador group to hire and just posting in there. And if any of you get the Skim, it's kind of like a daily highlights email. And then you have to get 10 people to sign up to be in the Facebook group. And so you kind of just get this like really interesting group of women that are like overachievers. They're interested in reading the news. They care about what's happening in the world. And that's been a really good pool for us to hire from. Beyond that, we post jobs publicly and through our website and other platforms, and that's how we've been able to find our team.
That's awesome. If anybody's watching this is a great corporate gift, by the way. I mean, no, seriously, it's like it shows, look, if a company says we're all about sustainability, well, it's easy to say that, but if you really want to show your employees that you're about sustainability, check out Final Straw. So my last question, you mentioned the fork. I know you have other ideas. What does the company look like in 5 years? So let's say you hit 80% of your goals. Nobody hits 100%, but you're moving in the right direction. What's your North Star for this company?
Well, I want us to be the Tupperware of reusables. I want to create normalcy around carrying items with you to reduce single-use plastic. I see a future where Starbucks doesn't offer cups, where all of these items are either in a kind of like library checkout system or something like that. The way we are consuming right now doesn't work. It's not sustainable. We don't see it on a day-to-day basis because we have the trash infrastructure where people, we put trash out and they take it away. What we're becoming more aware of is there is no away. So how do we fit into that? I think it's a product line, of these items, the straw, the fork, the co-container, and then beyond that, it's integrating reusables into larger systems like food delivery. I'm also looking at subscription models. One thing that's really exciting for me is when I look into my trash and I just am like, this is a bin of opportunities. and I honestly recommend you guys all do that because it is shocking what you will find. And there's so many opportunities in there for items that you can reduce. Every single piece of plastic ever created still exists today and will be here, for all of the future generations. So I believe that we are going to be the generation that's going to step up and is going to fix it and is going to just change the way that things have been done.
Well, I'm super impressed with you personally. I'm super psyched about what you've been able to do so far, and this is only the beginning for you. So I can't wait to talk to you in 4 or 5 years and see what you've done. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks you guys.
You have heard of PayJunction, maybe when I just cornered you in the hallway out there. And how many of you work there or have worked there or maybe just got an offer from us? Cool. All right, awesome. So PayJunction is a local financial technology company. We work in the payment processing industry, and we were founded by 3 UCSB graduates way back in 2000. They're still super involved to this day, and they're big supporters of the TMP program. And we love hiring gauchos. So I started off in a part-time sales recruiting role that is perfect for college students. And I now work there full-time along with a bunch of other people who started off in that role. If you're near graduation, we're also hiring full-time roles in sales and a bunch of other departments. So come talk to us after. We have cookies, we have candy, we have informational flyers. Go Gauchos.
Thank you.